New for 96. With your hosts, Kevin McCauley and Chris Nguyen.
We need to redefine, is it multiples of value or is it gulf of value? Because because you're right, you could do a 370Z and buy one for $2,000 and buy one for
You
$7,000.
can't buy one for $2,000.
Look, that's what I think it's worth. And that's a big multiple, but the
That's
gulf
fair.
is pretty small.
Yes.
Yeah,
All right,
and-
let's outline the challenge. We're back with Jordan. We're doing another epi, and Jordan threw...
hang on.
God fucking damn it.
Jordan, I hope your stay in my backyard was fine. I mean, I know it was a long 2 weeks, but we're glad that you survived, even though we just fed you nothing but dog food, or as known in Australia, fine cuisine.
I've been belittled. He would yell at me twice a day, enjoy your chum.
Yes.
And I really didn't know he could be that mean.
He poured you a bowl of Foster's at my insistence.
Yeah, again,
Did.
that is a hate
To be
crime.
fair, it was... The cruelty was that it was flat.
So,
Yeah.
moments ago, you threw the gauntlet, and you offered a challenge.
Yes. Oh, welcome to, by the way, another episode of New for 96. Oh, I forgot to
Never
cue up
gets old.
the song. I was going to cue Thunder Down Under.
I'll splice it in. Go
We'll
ahead.
splice it in.
So I'm sitting with two pedants, and
Yep.
they have crossed their T's and dotted their I's. And when I ponder something, they come back at it pretty quick and viciously. So my thought and my feeling was like, Chris was talking about
Continental.
Bentley Continental T's or R's?
R's. Yeah.
And saying that because they made that car for about a decade or so,
They did, yeah.
you could buy a new one for mid 200s bargain, or you could buy an old one for mid 20s.
And they look exactly
Still pretty good.
the same.
Exactly the same car. And then we were discussing like what is the largest gulf of a single generation of vehicle that you could buy new today at a dealer lot and buy cheapest used. And what we haven't discussed is whether it is multiples of value or golf.
My example throws it out the window.
Okay.
My
You go
example, it
first.
doesn't matter.
You go first. Go.
Me?
Yes.
Okay. I've got the numbers right here.
Yes.
But
Oh, you pulled up numbers.
I pulled up numbers.
When did you
So
even have the
this
time?
This car, a 2008 of this car is $24,995.
Uh-huh.
A 2019 is $150,380.
Okay.
I'm talking about the Maserati Gran Turismo.
Oh.
Same body, same car, 11 years difference, and $125,000 difference.
Wow. That is a pretty good golf.
I don't know if you can beat that.
I mean, I really don't. I mean, my natural inclination is to go back to the G-Class. Which
But
is
it's
still
new
the same.
now.
It is new now, so it does disqualify it.
Yeah, it's new, like the Ford Retro Thunderbird.
120 grand for the same body.
It's difficult because even Aston Martin has changed their. They even changed the V8
Yeah, and
Vantage.
things you can buy.
Vantage. If we did this a year ago or year and a half ago, Vantage would have probably gotten you in the door.
And disqualifying special editions, I feel we did have to disqualify things like the Evora 400
No, I
to
don't
the
think
early
so.
Evora, because that's going to be a particularly big golf as well.
But the Evora 400 is still like 90 grand.
I thought they were into the hundreds, and I have a friend that sold one into the 40s and 50s. It's still a big divide,
but
for
it's not
similar bodies.
125K.
No, it's certainly not.
It's not
Because
Wait,
you're not going to find an Evora
so wait,
for 25K.
Did you find a listing for a Gran Turismo
Yes.
for 25 grand?
True Car, I found one for 24.9. I found another one for
Wait, let me see.
25.9.
Wait, the new one. Okay,
They're
or
all the
the
new
current
one.
one, not
The
the
current-
not the when Maserati was charming, but when Maserati actually turned bad.
Well, this design was good. It was by Jason Castriota. It was a good car at one point, and
Yeah.
it's just bad now
That is
because they still
25.
sell it.
That is 25.
This is 25.
Okay.
This is an '08. This is the same car
That's a
they're
pretty
still
good.
selling.
That's a pretty good Golf.
I don't think you can touch that just because a lot of other cars have changed. There's
Yeah.
not a lot of other cars from 2008 on the market for some reason. It's very
So
odd.
I'm gonna go with a 200 series Land Cruiser, and granted, not as big as a Golf.
That's a good one.
That's actually
Because
a great
you can
choice.
buy
Because they
one-
hold their resale.
You can buy one for about 20 now with 200,000 miles on it. It's still 20 grand.
Okay.
Or you can buy a brand new one for $85,000. And
Oh.
I remember going to the configurator just to see how you could build one up. And you could build one up by adding like cargo nets,
Ooh.
floor mats,
Custom stitching on those cargo
you
nets?
can get it to 86 grand if you really want. But basically, there are no options.
Wow.
But the 200 series is going out of availability in the United States as of the next model year.
That's a bummer.
I think they're still they're producing it still the same, but it's just going to be. It will still be available as a Lexus
Well,
here.
given the current political climates, warlords are on the rise,
Yeah,
and
true.
they need to buy them all.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
only so many 200 series you can use to steamroll minorities.
Isn't it insane that so the difference was, let's see, the LX 470, is it 470 still?
I think so.
470.
490?
Is it 490 now?
I don't
God,
know.
I
I
can't
had
believe
one as
we
a
don't.
press car in like 2013
Here,
or
hang
something.
on a second. Let's see. I
had a
do need to know
refrigerated
this.
While I'm
console.
looking up, I think my curveball would have to be whatever they actually
570.
eventually sold that Julia, the press car, the infamous press car,
Yeah.
for versus what a new one is.
Oh, but it's
No,
yeah.
they still don't quite, because the thing about the Maseratis, it reached that lofty heights of mid six figure price new.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't think of anything. I mean, you can think of Bentleys, but they hold the value. They're never going to reach
Yeah.
that Golf either.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Maserati is
if I may, a 200 series Lexus LX 570, please throw your guess in. The Land Cruiser 200 series starts at $85,000. What
Yes.
does the LX start at?
50% more.
91.
You think 50% more?
Yeah.
So that'd be 120.
Yep, somewhere around there.
It starts at $86,380. It is $1,300 more than the Land Cruiser. That is
Wow.
insane, and that's why Lexus or Toyota is discontinuing the Land Cruiser and only having the LX. That is insane. Like,
When was the last time they released a new actual Range Rover platform?
2013.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's a 2013 Range Rover worth now compared to a new one in 2019?
Oh.
Ooh, see, here's a good thing because it's still the same platform. Let's say the oldest one now is the Range Rover Sport, I think, or maybe the Evoque.
No. The Evoque came out like a year before, but you're not gonna have the same depreciation curve.
Because
I still don't think it's going to top Maserati. I mean, he went
That's true.
straight
That's
to
pretty
it,
good.
straight to the source.
Pretty
of failure.
good.
And when Yael put up on the Instagram recently the Maserati up on blocks, and you translated the 4 wheels missing or whatever the caption
Oh
was.
yeah, that thing was garbage.
All I was thinking was it's also been 4 times repossessed, like every car of its generation.
This is true. Also, side note, so there are 2 configurations for the LX that you can get. So options include 2-row or 3-row.
Wow.
The 2-row is $86,380. For some reason, the 3-row is $91,380. It costs you $5,000 to get 2 baby seats in the 3rd row. That is insane.
It's because of the demand in Salt Lake City.
Oh, I was not even doing price low to high. You can find a Gran Turismo for $22,900.
Oh.
So a little bit cheaper.
Oh
the
my
cheapest
God.
2014 Range Rover I could find was $44,800.
Really? Okay. Wait, full-on Range Rover, not a Sport.
No, because the Sport's newer. The
Sport
Sport debuted about
2014, I thought.
It may have
15,
debuted
14?
in 2014 as a 2015, but the Range Rover
Here's the
Range
thing.
Rover
Yeah.
debuted in 2013 as a 14.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
It's that old now.
Yeah.
Because I don't like the current body style because I think it's too big. I liked the previous gen. And then I like the 90s version even more, the P...
I know, yes.
Whatever.
Okay. You're trying
but-
to start an argument no one is
Hang
digging
on.
in.
But I actually like the Range Rover Sport, the current gen Range Rover Sport.
Yeah, it's like a 2015.
Okay. I don't like the previous gen, which was a Discovery, but chopped, a coupe. It was a Discovery coupe.
Yeah.
So, anyways, nevertheless, all Range Rovers, it does not matter.
Yes.
You will buy that the first year, and then in 10 years, when they still offer the same model, it will still be about $20,000 or less. Amazingly, the early 2000s Range Rover, the BMW... Oh, no. It was Ford at that time, right?
Yeah, I think it was Ford.
2002 and beyond.
That was when Ford
PAG,
had
Premier Auto Group.
Yeah,
Premier
they had
Auto
Land
Group,
Rover
but it's-
and Jaguar.
Yeah, but it still had BMW.
That's
It had the
American,
BMW V8, I think, still in
At
it.
one point, for like a year, for
Yeah.
like 1.5 model
Yeah.
years, they had a BMW V8
It
for
was
the 745.
revolutionary as far as just it went into from utilitarian luxury to just luxury.
Yeah. But still utilitarian. Still
yeah.
one of the best off-roaders
Yeah.
you could buy.
And now it is a buy here, pay here lot special. You can buy one for $5,000, which is
Yeah.
insane.
What it will cost you every month.
Yeah, exactly. I do feel bad for the people who are like, ooh, a Range Rover for $5,000, and you buy it, and boy, it is the nightmare of your life.
Yeah. I wanted to talk about the 911 Turbo.
Okay. Of what era?
You're right. You can buy those really cheap now.
Well, any of them. Not really. But this is... actually, I had like a dumb anecdote.
Oh, please put that at the
Joke's on you. I'm cutting that out. When I was I was driving the 992 a month ago,
Yeah.
and I was talking to Rob from Panamera,
Yeah.
and he mentioned to me that he had a 996 Turbo at one
Nice.
point.
Good
He
choice.
had sold it recently, but
Yeah.
he'd had it. And like my immediate thought is like, man, what was that like? It must have been so fast. Because in my head, 996 Turbo is like the fastest car in the world. Like I'd just been driving 500 miles in a 450 horsepower 911, and it's like the 996 Turbo. It's like, oh, that's the holy grail of like speed. It's still so cool in my mind.
It's still so cool, and it's like retro fast now.
Yeah,
in a way, in the
But,
same
man,
way,
I'm
like a
sure it's
993
still
Turbo.
Fast. I'm
But
sure
we-
it's still
we
like
need to go
actual.
back to this because, and I'm a little hazy on the memory, but I made y'all run around the block, didn't I? in 996 Turbo.
Yeah, you took me in the green 996 Turbo, and that is a car that I'd like to, at one point in my life, have under ownership, because not even 996 is the end all be all for me as far as a modern turbo goes.
I would happily give you buying advice, as we were discussing in the last episode, but
Yeah.
after 2 weeks in your shed,
Yeah.
a little salty about it.
Well, yeah, true, fair. So, I mean, the 996 Turbo, it just looks, it's sized just right, and the 997 Turbo has too many bits and bobbles on the exterior.
Not my favorite. Not terrible.
And it's the same engine, right? It's still the same.
The first
Metzger.
gen was.
Yeah.
The point one was. I don't want to go too much into it, but so anyway, I've got a picture here of the 992 Turbo, spied,
Yeah.
like with camouflage and stuff.
What do you think?
We'll post it. I think this suffers from
997ism?
No, 991ism. So I can't picture. Jordan may disagree because Jordan maybe thinks the 991 Turbo is cool. But
I'm pulling a hell of a face right now.
Okay.
If viewers at home or listeners at home,
they're viewers.
Yep.
I mean, they are.
I just don't think the
He's
991
squinting
Turbo is
quite
cool.
heavily.
I don't think the
I
991
don't
Turbo is
either.
cool at all. I can't picture what the fascia. I had to Google to see what the front of a 992 or a 991 Turbo looks like.
Yeah. Here's the thing: is that
it seems almost like with the 991 and probably with this one, it's like they put the best. It's with the 991, the Turbo looks like this was the runner-up design for the 911, because the 911 already has the biggest wheels, it already has the airflow, and it already has turbos.
Here's the thing:
so
is that
what does the Turbo do? Except it has a little bit more, but it doesn't look meaningfully more. It doesn't look meaningfully more aggressive.
doesn't.
It has like a little bit of a winglet. I feel like the Turbo suffers from the Raptor thing, where the Raptor, the current gen Raptor, doesn't look like as badass as the first Raptor because they incorporated all that stuff into the regular F-150 a little bit. And so it's like the turbo is like all the stuff that made the turbo cool is kind of in the 911.
Well, I'm curious if it's actually wider because
I'm curious too. That's another topic I have.
Yeah, because all of them now are wide. And so it's the standard. Does that mean that special models are now wider, which would be insane? I mean, it'd be really cool.
We'll comment on that. We'll get to that. But
yeah. So as someone who spent a good portion of today in a 991 turbo, and as an owner, ex-owner of a Turbo S from 2005, being with the holy grail of the 996 turbos,
X50, all that.
They're very different cars.
Yeah,
completely different cars.
Yeah,
and I did 2 weeks ago, just before I got locked in a shed and shunned. I think this is the reason why was extolling the virtues of PDK to Chris as far as a daily driver and how good it is mechanically, and that's really the telling point. The current turbos, the 907.2 was kind of the tipping point of this, but the 991 especially is. We're making a car as good as the car itself can be, and damn what you feel about it. That's really what this procedure and engineering exercise is. And so the 991 doesn't feel any faster than my old 906 Turbo S.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel any faster than there's a 78 930 that we've been driving recently in the shop. And that thing is sublime, but it's maybe 300 horsepower and 40, 50 years old at this stage. And the 991 is so fast that you really never get to enjoy the speed.
Sure.
The car itself is so good. You never get to enjoy its quirks. You don't get to enjoy how good the steering is because just driving in a straight line, you know how good the steering is. You never get to experience the better aspect of it.
The general criticism of any supercar today, a modern supercar, is that there's no build-up anymore. It is instantaneous speed. And if you're using it in a city, you don't really get to enjoy it. Like, there's just no, you can't ring it out. It is just always real fast. And you're probably using, 1/20th of the throttle to get it to legal speeds.
I don't doubt that the 991 Turbo is extremely fast and very capable and everything like that. That's not in doubt. I know it's an incredible car. I just don't think it's cool.
No,
I don't think the Turbo has been cool for a long time.
Have you driven one?
I've driven the GT2 RS.
That's not the same thing.
I know.
And again, this is back to a segue where we've discussed off camera, and I keep saying camera even though no one's watching.
It's fine.
Us.
There is a camera in the room.
It is pointing to the ground.
Last time I looked at the camera, it was pointing outward.
I am hereby declaring, putting my foot down, and making damn sure that Mr. Kevin McCauley captures the machine spirit of all the Porsches he's never driven.
Yeah.
Which it turns out is a surprisingly large field. Anything earlier than his car, apparently anything that's appropriate to drive to your accountant's or your lawyer's office, he needs to be taken for rides. And that is something that I, Jordan Romelier, owner of a Porsche shop...
How do you pronounce that?
Yes, well, we discussed this weeks ago. We might have forgotten. That I will put on the burden of my shoulders and really enjoy suffering through listening to him give me platitudes about how good a Speedster is. Because he doesn't know, he's only driven the new one.
I am willing to shoulder this burden as well. If you insist, I will drive these cars. I actually keep a list.
This does
so
keep
nerdy.
a list.
I keep a list of every 911 I've driven, and it's 20. But,
under his bed. It's
they're
awful.
only in the last 40 years, not the last 60 years, and I would love to drive older ones. So maybe we can work that out.
We can definitely work that out.
Okay.
And then we can also drive some of the newer ones you're missing, because a 991 Turbo, like I said, it's what you drive to a meeting with your lawyer.
I get it, but it's not cool.
But it's not cool. It's true. It's the idea. It's everything from the looks down to the the drivability is one thing, because in and around town, a base C2 is everything you need and can get out of inside a city. The idea, however, for some reason, the 996 Turbo being what we might consider the last good turbo.
Not good, cool.
Cool.
There's a difference.
Cool.
There's a
Fine.
difference.
Cool. Because I think maybe it was because it was the first water-cooled turbo.
No, I mean it could be because I was 16 and it was
Yeah.
on the poster
The
and it was
idea,
silver.
the whole thing.
Definitely a
It's-
good bit
that's-
of that.
But let's be honest, like that might be one of the last times that the turbo was the turbo.
But that was the last time the turbo was iconic because I feel like it had its own look, whereas after that it would kind of look like a fussier 911,
Yeah.
but not significantly different. Like the 991, like I said, I couldn't tell you what it looked like, and I just Googled it yesterday because it just looks
It was
a
kind
little
of
bit busier.
the last time it was special in a way. I mean, we had, there were GT3s, GT2s.
I think having the turbo and the Turbo S and the Turbo S being
Yeah.
the ubiquitous one also muddied things.
So I followed on that entire point and nodded in agreement for very different reasons.
But here's
The
the thing.
996 turbo is the last cool turbo, not for how it looks. And you're right. The 996 Gen, you see a GT3, you know it's special. You don't
Yeah.
know why, but you know it's special.
Yeah.
You see the turbo, you know it's special. Don't know why, you know it's special. Once you got to the 997, it really did blend in.
Well, because like I said, to touch on, and not to cut you off, but they all had big wheels. They all had scoops.
Yeah.
They all had something. Like,
Also, there were just
there's less to differentiate.
there was just more of everything that used to be special and limited.
Yeah, please continue.
Okay, so Porsche were a lot less brave with the 997 because of some of the knocks that were taken with the futurism of the 996 as far as in the time.
Oh, I mean, you're talking about the overall.
Yeah, the aesthetic.
Oh, absolutely.
The aesthetic.
Yeah,
But
they made a
going-
bold thing, and then they walked it all back.
But going back to why I agree with you despite you being completely wrong,
That's fair.
is that the reason the 996 is the last cool turbo isn't so much how it looked or its presence compared to its contemporaries, but it's how it made you feel. You feel more comfortable in a 996 turbo compared to say a 930, like an early 930, than you would to a 997. The 997 is more akin to a 991 turbo, and then just any of the AMGs,
Sure.
any of these big barn, like at water barn stormers, than it was to its predecessors.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a very clear and delineating cut as far when Porsche made a conscious effort. Is like, we're not giving you a rush anymore. We're giving you a fast car,
Yeah.
and the power delivery is
Brutal.
in every statistical sense better
Yeah.
in the later vehicles, but it is nowhere near as
Well,
exciting.
it comes back to the point of why we like the cars that we do, and it's because of the flaws, in a way. Because the 996 turbo, while it was a twin turbo and turbo lag was minimal, there's still kind of like a raw, flawed feeling to it. Like there's kind of a, you could die, feeling to it a little bit. Versus like the new cars, they're all fast and they're all stable. It doesn't matter. Like you've just, it's that superhero ism to it. Like you stomp on the gas, it doesn't matter. You're not going to spin out. You're not going to lose control. You will always point forward. It's going to be good and fast, and that's not fun.
And it's a trope, but the idea of a 911 under acceleration, the steering going light. The 996 turbo is the last turbo where you feel that effect, and we've talked about this
Exactly.
with the 993 turbo when you drove it. I mean, there's a whoa and a rush.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the last time you get.
You have to take your hand off the wheel to shift,
Yeah.
and you're like, I
Whoa.
don't want to take my eyes off the road to look at the shifter.
And where
Yeah.
this is particularly disappointing in the 997 is the 997 chassis is identical. You can unbolt every part from a 997 turbo and every part from a 996 turbo and swap cars.
Yeah.
Yet one feels 20 years older,
Yep.
one feels 30 years newer.
Sure.
And the newer aspect loses a lot of character.
Yeah.
That being said, that new one that Kevin showed us the spy photo of, I want one as a daily driver. Again, I would be cross-shopping that with an AMG. I would be cross-shopping that with...
So what do you think it's going to be? It's going to be $180 at this point. And at that level, I'd almost rather have a GT3 Touring. Although...
Maybe you'll have to wait longer for that.
I'll have to wait longer for that, yeah, for sure.
At any level, I would want a GT3 Touring. Like, that's my all-time dream.
And that's the thing is that, like, so we then default back to the non-turbo cars. And turbo just doesn't mean what, especially now, does not mean
Well,
what it used to, because
let's
everything's
ignore that.
turbo. Yeah. So it doesn't matter. Everything's turbo.
Why'd you bring the GT3 Touring into this? Come on, let's stick to the discussion.
Yeah, so here's the thing. I mean, and the reason why I compare a 991 turbo to an AMG or an M5 or one of these big automatic Autobahn Stormers
Yeah.
is because it's not the weekend car you want a daily.
Sure.
It's a daily.
Sure.
I mean, that's it.
It's comfortable. It goes when you want it to go. Although here's a dumb maybe statement. Okay. So are you talking about a modern? Are you talking about
bad opinions?
Are you talking about a modern AMG? If we're gonna talk about, I don't know if we're leveling the playing.
Yeah, we're talking about the
Modern
new
and-
turbo bullshit ones.
So no, I don't want that either.
Right.
I was gonna say between a 992 turbo and even though no one has any opinions and cannot have an opinion about it now, like we've at least you and I and possibly you, I don't know, have experienced the 5.5 liter bi-turbo.
I think it's wonderful.
I don't like it.
I love it.
Mainly because I've experienced the 6.2 multiple times over, and it just does not have the same character.
So when I was in Mercedes-Benz college, it
Yeah.
was the transitional period between the 6.2 and the 5.5.
Yeah.
And honestly, from the inside, it's a very similar feeling from the 996 turbo to the 997. They're like, it's better in every way.
Yeah, it goes.
We're losing a lot.
Yeah.
You know,
It goes, but it doesn't feel
But that means-
as raw.
When I keep looking for dailies, I want something with radar cruise control,
Yeah.
and lane keep assist, and it's automatic, and I want it to be fast as shit.
Yeah.
Naturally, I gravitate towards something like looking at Panamera turbos, AMGs,
Sure.
901 turbo. I
Yeah.
mean, those are the cars that exist to go insanely fast with the least effort possible.
Sure.
And you consistently say, well, I'm replacing the daily with the weekend car I want to daily. And when GT3 Touring is something that I absolutely need to have in my stable,
Yeah.
and I would daily it. I really would. And that's the hypocrisy that I have because
That's the
of the
thing.
passion I have for
You
the cars.
find here. Okay, so my thought of selling the wagon, rear-wheel drive
Are you trying to steer
E91.
us toward this?
I am. Here's the thing. So it's just comfortable and bouncy, and it's just too comfortable and too bouncy. And I've driven enough sports cars through the worst part of town where I live to know that I'm fine with the bumpiness. I'm fine with like it not being a match, but it's what I want. Like I cannot deal with the bounce anymore. It's not to say that the wagon is annoying. It's just I'm fine with the firmness, and a 997 C2 fits the bill probably just about right. There's enough give. There's enough go. But as far as like a GT3 Touring, I'd be curious whether or not that'd be comfortable throughout town. Although 991s, I think, are so perfectly compliant and sporty. Like they've worked out the suspension pretty well.
It's nicely tuned. It doesn't crash over things.
Yeah.
Like it might be firm, but it's
Because I've driven 996s through this area. I've driven 997s through this area, and they're crashy. And 991s, like I've not driven them through this area. I've driven one in California, and it was surprisingly compliant. Like it would thud through things, but it was a thud and not like a bang. So
It's reassuring because if you go too fast over a whole bunch of bumps in an intersection in a 901, you go, oh,
Yeah.
well, shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's the worst that happens. They really, you're right. They did a good job. It's interesting because you look at a 901 and where everything's bolted together and the angles they're at and the alignment and just the physical manifestations of how they designed the suspension. It's, again, nothing revolutionary.
Yeah.
It's just Porsche doing what Porsche does.
Yeah.
And going, well, it was pretty good.
Yep.
We can do this a little better.
Yeah.
We can do this a little better. And
Yep.
they do a little better
there it
every
goes,
time.
yeah.
Same way goes that, I haven't driven the 992. I haven't flown a 992 on some honeymoon from continent to continent. I haven't serenaded it.
Yeah.
I haven't had a sunset out of a cockpit with a 992. But I'm sure over time I'm going to develop some feelings and get to know it and,
Sure.
just feel what it wants to give me.
Yeah, of course.
and I'm gonna realize that it is the 991, the 991.2, the
Yeah.
997s, the 996s. It's just that, but a little better.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I was gonna say something about when we were talking about the turbocharged performance, and you talk about all of these cars that are fast dailies and just going fast and the shift. When I was in the 992, this was just one thing. I drove on the Autobahn all day, and I was. At the end of the day, it was almost abrasive. That power delivery, that AMG power delivery of like the whoosh and then the thump and then the whoosh and then the thump, like that shift, and it's like it's not pleasurable.
pleasant,
It's kind of a fun thing, but after a day of that, you're like this doesn't sing. It sneezes.
Here's the thing: is it that's in part, the dual clutch.
Right, I'm saying
power
the dual
delivery.
clutch and the twin turbo.
And not that I've driven one, but the LFA single clutch, like it's still fast shifting, but there is kind of like a build up, and the build up is kind of where the fun is, where it's like fast, fast instead of fast,
And I'm sure the 992 and the power delivery, I know it's just like a 991.2. In that sense, a lot of it's the same, but it's like it's not enjoyable. It becomes abrasive.
So we're all talking about the same thing here. This is a difference in automotive enthusiasm where you're either about the feels or you're about the numbers, and that's just where the difference is. Where the manufacturers, they're all about the numbers. It doesn't matter at this point.
But I think a part of that is because, and I always say this, and everyone rolls their eyes. After the GTR, I think everyone had to be about the numbers. I think it's like a thing. We cannot be beaten by a Nissan.
The start of dual clutch technology was where that began.
In the 70s with Porsche.
Sure.
80s.
Popular. Okay, we'll go with popular. We'll go with popularization. We'll be
they raced
with
in the
accessible.
962. That was the first place they raced it. Was the 962.
Okay, popularization of dual clutch technology, which would have been what VW.
Jordan was rolling his eyes
No,
15
it's
times.
the PDK. I mean, the Porsche were the first people to really utilize it.
Yeah, but accessible, like in a consumer standpoint.
Oh yeah, the R32 had DSG,
At
GTI, DSG.
It was DSG, and then it was SMG, and then it was PDK afterwards. And first gen DSG was great until it wasn't, and suddenly you had a GTI with a $6,000 like transmission
I think
bill.
You still could. I think that still could happen to a new GTI
totally,
or any
yeah.
Volkswagen.
And then you had SMG with the SMG. Oh, Kevin's motioning like a baby for the bottle.
And while we take that little moment, I want to jump back a little before we get too far away.
Yeah, Chris keeps jumping back to his own shit.
Whatever.
The feeling that you got in the 992, where you're like, after a while, this isn't great. The way that I've thought about that is there are two kinds of cars. I mean, the 996, you get in the boost, and the 993 turbos, you get in the boost, and the boost builds to the red line.
Yeah.
In a new car, the modern ones, the way that they hit, boost builds to where it limits its own torque.
Yeah.
And so you get a pull and then a push.
Right.
And it's the second jarring action where you're not riding a roller coaster of a wave of power and torque.
Yeah.
You're literally just jumping like in a more digital sense. You're going from 0 to 1.
And that shift is such a like guttural,
It's
like bassy thump in your gut that you feel.
You want the car to build the pressure in your sternum, and then you want it to slowly relieve it.
Yeah,
totally.
And the modern cars are like, well, we're getting you to the 500 horsepower you bought.
You want to be at 120
No, that's
in
a
2
really
seconds.
really good point. That's a really good point.
And I hate that feeling.
I do too.
It's why the
It's a video game, and that's the era that we live in. It's the video game.
Chris has never played a racing game.
I have
just
not.
for the people.
No, but
The last video game I played was
driving
Nintendo.
A modern 700 horsepower engine, you don't feel as fast as driving an old 300 horsepower turbo engine.
Right.
Well, that's what you want. You want the shake. You want the noise. You want like the build up, and
You're going faster. It feels slow.
Yeah, and it's slow car fast, except that it can also be fast car fast, in a way. But today's cars, and we sound so curmudgeonly for saying all of these things, but I mean it's kind of true. Like honestly, if you just want to beat someone off a red light line.
the camera just went full erect. Okay, we're gonna cut him off, but I had a question about the.
You son of a bitch.
I had a question about the. So, do you think the 992? Do you think it will go wider than it? Because it's already very wide. I'm going to give you a hypothesis. Also, this is about, apparently a chance for me to talk. But so with the 991 GT3 RS, they really went for the rear width of the tires. I remember that was a big thing. The tire width, and the 0.2, and in the GT3 RS, and then in like the 992, they've gone for like a front wider track situation, which I attribute. So what I see as the benefit of that is they can have a not gigantic tire, not like a 275. It's a 245, but it's wide enough. You have the grip. You have the benefits of more grip without losing the feel. That's how I see that. If you had a wider tire, and I know it doesn't need a super wide tire because there's not weight up front, but it has a relatively medium-sized tire. And you have the feel of that, but there's still outright grip. But do you think on the 992, on the special versions, they're going to go wider still?
So
track.
This is where you have a slightly shorter memory.
Oh, no.
I'm going to take you down memory lane a little bit.
I'm about to get owned.
Let's go down memory
And
lane.
I will quantify this by saying when Porsche makes a big fuss and excitement about, hey, we did a new rear wheel, the rim's an inch larger than the front, we went to the wider body, we did this, they did it because there are engineers at Porsche who genuinely love what they do and they're fucking excited to tell you about it.
Yeah.
And they do it for a reason. And the car is better because of that. It's certainly not marketing puffery. Porsche doesn't do that well from their engine. You know, if Pointinger says something, it's because he's excited that they've done it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Remember when the 997 GT3 came out, and we had this feeling that it's the end of the line for what was a staple. I mean, that was a golden era for Porsche where they came out of bankruptcy. The Carrera Cup was a huge race series around the world, and the GT3s would go to places like Kodak wasn't built yet, but when it was, through the S-curves there, and spin out like crazy, and crowds went wild. And Porsche came back and said, the problem with this is we're kind of stuck with the engine out the back thing, and the front track isn't wide enough.
Yeah.
So if you look at the more expensive a 997 GT3 is, the wider the front track is. Going to the RS 4-liter, the RS 4-liter wasn't so much about the engine, it was the fact that it had those flares and the wider front track, the Y-Sock front axle. What they developed as the race car on the GT3R, the contemporary thing, they put on the road car to say, hey, we're really sorry about the understeer. Now, when on the 992 they've decided to widen the front track, they're addressing the same issue.
It's the same width as the GT2 RS.
Yeah, but here's the thing: when you keep the tire smaller, I mean, there are certain far deeper down the rabbit hole decisions to run a smaller tire. But remember, every single road car sold, especially the C8, will understeer. It's safer. It's regular in a road car.
Right.
And so what Porsche has done is they've improved the handling and the limits and the grip up until that point. Because it doesn't matter how wide your track is. If your tire is smaller in the front than in the rear, with more traction in the rear, the front will break first. And that's what they've done. They're just raising the limits by broadening, spreading out the track.
Yeah.
And that's something they've been doing since the 997 GT3. Because in the 996... it was comically funny to watch things go through S-curves in any track in the world and just spin.
Yeah.
And that's why they did it. And they made a big fuss about it at the time. So when we're looking at the race cars now, I don't think the fenders will get wider, but the tire will get wider.
On the GT cars now.
Yes.
I think you're right. I think it will get wider in the front. I don't know how much wider they can go in the rear where it's like not going to fit on roads.
Proportionality, because would you say that the 993 GT3 was better than the 997?
There's no 993.
Oh, sorry. 996, I meant.
No. The 997.2s, those RSs,
Yep.
are perfect.
Sure. Okay. So it's just lore and dream that the 993, 996 was, because no traction aids, etc., raw, blah blah blah.
Well, they got more and more of those as the year went on, but I think if you were to pick a specific idea that was carried through from the 996 GT3 through the RS4 liter that came at that point, and even 10 years later, that is a very clear and concise idea run outside of the realms of normal marketing, accounting, and production. And like I said, it's so rare. It's very, very rare that you consistently see people from a car company, engineering side especially, coming out excited by something they've done. And it's not Renault saying, hey, we got a new Clio Cup because someone beat us at the Nürburgring for the front-wheel drive records. We got an Akrapovic exhaust and some new suspension. This is, Bräuninger going, we did this because it really helped, and we took this. I mean, that's the thing. The Weissach front axle. I mean, they were so proud of what they accomplished on the racetrack that they put on the road car and made sure they branded the road car as such, but only to the point where very, very few Porsche nerds will remember those interviews. Right? So, it's not written in a sticker on the side.
Our friend of the pod, Will Pierce, he provided this question to me about the 992 and the width and that issue. And also he told me that Pruniger drives a Dodge Rumblebee Ram around Europe. Around Germany. That's his car.
Look, as someone from a civilized culture, nothing makes me more happy than driving a truck. I mean, there is something. The Germans love trucks. And the Australians love trucks.
Jordan also drives a Ford F-250 as a sort of daily.
Yes, on a semi-regular occasion. And it has 1,000 foot-pounds of torque.
Yeah. It's a diesel. It's
so not as much as a Hellcat.
Yeah,
Carry on.
Yeah. Why would you buy a caravan when you can move your house?
Here's the thing, is that I like the impracticality of a Raptor and would drive that all day long, but...
I love Raptors.
So the premier dealership here, the Greenway one, now they have like AMG as a signage thing because that's what it's become.
No, but
you don't buy Mercedes, you buy an AMG.
That's AMG pushing to be.
No, exactly. Yeah,
like, this is not the dealer taking upon themselves.
No, exactly. It's not the dealer. It's just the manufacturer has said.
But why is that a problem? The problem is they're not offering 6.2s.
The problem is that it's a package. It's
rolling his eyes so hard.
It is an appearance. Yeah,
George's rolling his eyes and this camera's rolling backwards. It's crazy.
It's an appearance package. And even when it's a performance package, it doesn't matter anymore. Like, it's just no longer... I mean, this is a curmudgeonly comment still. It's just not special as AMG used to be.
I have mixed thoughts about this. One being an Australian, the second one being someone who went to Mercedes-Benz college and have been fully...
What makes you qualified?
I know, yeah, that's it. I mean, I'm there...
Go on.
Able to work on the cars and really understanding the product lines and placements. Now... Australians, we are the largest per capita consumers of AMG products. Most of them
that fits.
Yeah, and so in a larger percentage of all Mercedes-Benz vehicles sold, Australians we buy the full fat AMG version. And if you think about it, AMG is really the last bastion of the V8 burnout monster.
Yeah.
In the the European sector, because of course you've got your 30-year-old AMGs that you can buy as a Dodge Hellcat or whatever, but the
20.
Anyway, the interesting thing about AMG in Australia is we're the only country in the world where you can buy the full fat version of the 5.5 liter in rear-wheel drive, because they couldn't force us to buy the all-wheel drive version because we are right-hand drive vehicles. The steering column got in the way, the front aspect of the all-wheel drive. So you can get like the full 600 horsepower twin turbo V8 rear-wheel drive burnout monster right when GM and Ford pulled the plug on the industry, and that's the Australian system. AMG is still great. Make AMG great again.
Oh my goodness.
The other end of that is working on them. The lower tier AMG packets, they tend to break a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, because they stress components when they shouldn't. And
Lower tier meaning just kind of like
C350 AMG.
yeah, so
edition.
sport editions, not actual AMGs. But
Yeah, there were.
or I mean, what is an actual AMG nowadays? But
But
Just
what
the
it is,
AMG GGT.
yeah,
it's a fancy
Nevertheless.
bumper. It's more expensive lights, more
Yeah.
expensive wheels, more expensive brakes, and when those cars are wearing out, they get sold. But
Yeah.
in an ideal world, we'd be fixing them for a lot more money.
Well, according to Autocar, the next E-Class, like the next line of AMGs are going to have 4-cylinder turbo hybrid. Like, and it's going to be the 4-cylinder from the new A45,
Yeah.
I think.
But that's a 2-liter engine that they're warrantying with like 460 horsepower at this point.
Yeah, it's above 400. That's all I know.
It's absurd. And again, we had the hatchback with the big wing, and it's
Yeah.
a classic boy racer. I mean,
so AMG has just become the spend more money brand for Mercedes.
But how is
because-
that different than M?
Well, okay, so here's the thing. So it was announced, 2 days ago, that there will be a plug-in hybrid AMG, which, again, it is counterintuitive to the idea of what it was supposed to be. And we're speaking from a consumer perspective because who knows what the brand arc was supposed to be for what AMG is. But it's basically... how much money do you want to spend? We'll just add all the popular things, such as plug-in hybrid.
Hey, I wish they'd have it. I mean, if I'd be happier with an NA engine in the hybrid than with the turbo.
True,
stuff.
like at this point, yeah, sure.
does Mercedes make an NA engine anymore?
No.
Nope.
Yeah, no.
Nope.
It's
It
been a long
used to
time.
No, actually, yeah, it's true. Nothing. The only naturally aspirated, like kind of performance-oriented engines come from Lexus. So that's the only place where you can get a naturally aspirated V8, which would be the Lexus GS F, I think is the last one. Maybe the RS and the
Yeah, the RC has and the GS both have the V8.
yeah.
The last NA V8 in a small
These are the
scale?
last. Yeah.
I think
What about
so.
the Corvette?
Besides that, that revs to
Whatever.
3,000.
Doesn't count. Doesn't count. But like that is astonishing. First of all, that Lexus.
Well, that Maserati
of all-
Gran Turismo is probably an NA
Yeah,
V8.
it's still big.
True. True.
Whatever it was in 07,
Yeah.
except now with more scoops and
Yeah,
portholes
yeah,
and
yeah.
garbage applied.
But like, isn't that is a little bit crazy that Lexus of all brands, because of all brands who could just abandon performance, true performance, they could AMG brand, M brand, everything, F, it doesn't matter. Like, but they are choosing to go naturally aspirated for. I mean, I'm sure it's tooling and financial blah blah blah. Not
Yeah, I'm gonna
for
cut
purism.
you off. I'm cutting you off at the 45-minute
Oh my
mark.
god.
What do you think? What?
Well, no, actually, I really want to follow that up because he did remind me of a conversation that we had
Oh, no.
not that long ago where I got a hint of some things, and as far as what Kevin's shenanigans were, that Porsche were up to some good stuff, right? So we're discussing this idea. We're talking about Mercedes and only having turbo engines, and Lexus being the last bastion of the V8 in certain arenas. Mercedes are trying to build the best car they can.
Not from the products I've seen.
Well, okay.
Wait, define car.
I'm being an apologist, but they defined car. They were the ones to define the car.
They did have the first car, yes.
Recently, Kevin was out driving the 991.2 Speedster around some kind of Europe, and I got very excited by this based on a number of small throwaway bylines in previous teaser articles saying that this car has independent throttle bodies and has a revised exhaust and exhaust valves and certain aspects. It was still a 4-liter engine that made no more power than the current GT3 RS.
Or GT3. It's based on the GT3. Or
It is.
Yeah,
But
it's
in between the GT3 and the GT3
exactly.
RS.
It makes
power
like
level.
2 more than the GT3.
And I sent him a very angry email. I'm like, how dare you drive that car and not send me pictures of the independent throttle bodies? His response was, what? what throttle body is. And I said, go just find pictures, send me the stuff. And him, in all his grace, he sent me a series of sort of press special technical brochures. And he said, look, I don't know if what you're interested in is in here, but here is what they've given me to explain the car. And I went through it, and it is a treasure trove of technology. And they said, here is exactly what we've done to the engine. Here is exactly what it does, how we did it, why we did it, the materials it's made of, what effect it has and how it runs. Here are the measurements. Here is this. If you want to build your own at home, here is the CAD file. It is pretty much how detailed this was.
Yeah.
And maybe from a very technical aspect, it's highlighting this idea that Porsche have, and we're going back to it in the GT program, they're always very proud of their innovations, but Porsche have really started to focus in the next GT engines on realizing that power isn't everything, because they can't get that much more out of it. What they're really focusing on is character, and I think that's what Lexus has done very well. Lexus has always done very well.
Yep.
And this is what Porsche with the Speedster and the next GT3 are probably going to be doing. They're focusing on...
You hinted at, this is basically the next GT3 motor. It'll have some more innovations. It might have a higher peak number, but it's going to be this architecture.
And I cannot wait for the official Porsche program for GT owners. So the guy that's had every GT3 generation, and he's taken it to the same racetrack, and he says, well, how come I'm not faster? And he says, well, Porsche goes, we've given you a faster car every 3 years, but you've never really learned how to use it. So here's one, just sit tight. Have another 3 years of practice. This one's faster, we promise. And
I mean, it will be. But you know they're going to do enough stuff with the grip and the tires and the chassis that it will be faster.
And they can absolutely do that, but it was
I get your point.
It was heartening for me to see them focusing on character.
Absolutely. That's a really good point. Well, my review, my own plug here, my Auto Week article went live yesterday about all these cars in my trip to Belgium and stuff. So I got to plug that.
Yeah, and
but anyway.
What a shame. Also,
it's not going to print because Auto Week, RIP.
Yes, actually, I when you listen, when anyone talks to me, it's a little bit of a Charlie Brown wop 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 wop. And,
Except us, of course.
I knew you were writing the article, but I didn't remember which particular magazine. But I did see in Jalopnik that yes. And I wondered.
It's such a bummer. This was going to be like a cover story, and now they're not going to print, and so it just went onto their website.
If people aren't familiar, Auto Week is unfortunately ending their print series, and just following along with much other print journalism, it's going online only.
But it's not just that. It's going to be handled by Hearst. I think. Yeah. I don't know. It's very.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to find a picture from the article. I'm going to set it as my desktop background, just so you can have your cover.
I will. Oh, thank you. But I'll send you high res. I'll give you photos because you probably won't be able to get good ones from the online version.
Because it's like 1 pixel by 1 pixel.
It's
like it was going downhill. They had me submit it and dial up.
Yeah.
The Australian internet.
Yeah.
Yes. I broke Kevin.
You did.
Yes. Hey, wait. So, you don't like the E46 Compact?
No.
Them's fighting words.
Wait.
That's not fighting words.
No one does.
I love it.
I will fight anyone.
You like it ironically.
Who's ever been given one of those by their dad.
You like it ironically.
I love it ironically.
Yeah. So that's different from actually loving it because it's bad.
Yeah, there's no irony in that.
Bad.
I mean, there is... One of the really nice things about being an expat, I've been lucky enough to live in a number of continents, a number of countries, a number of places. Any place ever called Deer Park is not a good place.
No. Deer Park here certainly is not good.
And there's a series.
You don't like the smell of benzene in the morning?
And this is it. And there's a series of suburban spots in every Western developed nation in the world where you will find bad smells, bad consistent names, and E46 compacts.
Oh, fighting words.
No, because it's the first owner of that car was the dad of the 16-year-old that got it. Mm-hmm. And then the second owner of that car was the dad of the 16-year-old who got it next. And then the third owner of that car was the dad after he got divorced. And it's just been run to the ground. And they're not good. That is not a good vehicle.
Yeah, but it's weird. I like weird cars.
I mean, there's weird, but then there. I mean, like let's say
Pomo. It's weird for the
the
single gear.
Renault like Avantime.
Yeah, the
is
Avantime's cool.
The Aventime
cool.
is cool.
I would never own one, but here's the thing: is that the E36 compact, the TI, was weird. Same concept.
Yeah, but we got
is
those.
better.
Yeah, not as ugly.
Not as ugly. That's the point.
Not as,
I hate
is
them
that?
both.
Ugh.
Both all of the Compact 3 Series exist in a tier of vehicles that is spearheaded and topped by DeLoreans. Weird.
Yep.
Still shit.
Yep.
Yeah, Chris, I
And
sent you a
it's
picture
beyond the category.
from Leipzig of a E36 wagon. It was bad, but still cool.
Yes, I guess.
So the friend and client of mine who's helping me, reorganize and run my business quite a lot, has an incredibly well done E46 M3 wagon, rear fenders and everything.
Really?
50 volt swapped.
What?
Everything.
Wait, that's pretty amazing.
Why
What?
doesn't he come to your? Why haven't
Yeah.
I seen it?
He avoids my hobbies like the plague. I think he
Of course.
Your
really
job
good
is
help.
not a hobby.
No, you'll meet him. You'll meet him, man.
I want to see this car.
He's a
What's
neighbor
the-
of mine.
Is it gray or
No.
blue?
It's that classic BMW like Interlagos blue or whatever. The kind of royal.
I think I've
or navy
seen this
blue.
car on Instagram because I
Yeah.
think he commented on a picture because it was when we were doing the wagon trip. I think he may have commented because
I definitely spoke to him about it, but like most project cars, he's hinted that the car is for sale for the right price. And I said, well, what would you do next? He's like, well, M5 wagon. Duh. And then I said, well, logically, are we doing a kind of transporter scenario where we do a V12 7 Series wagon?
Oh,
And he told me I was dumb. And I'm still hurting about that because I think that would be a fantastic car.
That
I think
would
so
be
too.
cool.
That'd be kind of amazing. Yeah.
Bill Caswell's building like a 7 Series coupe, which is dumb, but yeah, no 7 Series wagon. I'm all about that. That's
Yeah.
I am
cool.
too. I've seen one conversion, not in person, but it does look amazing. A true long roof.
Ara
That's long.
Ara from I saw Ara from Alara Garage.
Yeah.
His RS4 wagon, which is a car that does exist in the world.
Yeah.
and he's building, but it's in progress.
So,
Oh, I see.
I mean, and you've really hinted on what I was going to say. Like, are we excited about the new RS6?
Yes, but asterisk.
My whole thing is, I think it's cool. I think it looks not good, but because the RS things make it look worse. I am a fan of, and this sounds weird because I don't really like Audis, the current A6/S6 wagon. I think looks amazing. The RS version is worse. But like as far as the body style, it's cool. I'm glad we're getting a wagon. I wish we would just get like an S6 wagon because I think that's cooler.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's good. It's neat. But yeah, so this style of A6, I think it's not a good body style on the sedan. It was made for the wagon. And when you're in Germany, you see how many wagons they sell, and it's like, oh, it makes sense they designed it for the wagon first.
Yeah, and I feel like it's a car that's going to fall into a category where the only ones we'll ever see are the RS6 wagon. So it's going to be this...
Well, especially
this
here, because they're
rare-
only going to bring the RS6
yeah, and
wagon.
it's going to be this rare, slightly uncomfortable styling thing you see, and you're like,
Yeah.
why is it here? What are you doing? Love it.
Mhm.
That means that, like, it's not going to be like the V10 diesel Touareg, where you saw a bunch of Touaregs and you saw the
Yeah.
diesel V10, you went, oh, that is cool.
Yeah.
You know, it's just, they
I don't
need
think I've
to,
ever seen one.
I don't know that I've ever seen one. I want one, even though it is ruinous to own.
They're
It's the official
fantastically fun to drive.
official vehicle of Australia.
I can confirm.
Yeah.
They're absolutely not. We had the the one that we really wanted to have, like my family in particular, was the Cayenne Diesel S, the
Oh, yeah.
4-liter twin turbo, like diesel Cayenne.
Is that a second gen Cayenne? Facelift?
They actually had it the whole way through
Oh
up
my
until
God.
relatively recently, and that was a big. So we also had the V12 A7. You know that they had the W12 6-liter twin turbo W12.
In an
diesel.
A7?
Yes. Not A7, Q7. Sorry.
Oh, okay,
Oh.
okay.
Yeah,
An
so-
A7 W12
So
would be
there was
cool. I love the A7.
This is something that, again, I don't think was really well done in America, where the Volkswagen, the Audi, and the Porsche on the same platform had these monstrous diesel engines.
That's crazy.
Now the zeitgeist says, don't do diesel anymore.
Yeah, I wonder why.
It's not kosher.
Sore subject.
Yeah, a little bit. But those were all really fun. But I think the magic of the V10 Touareg was the fact that you would rarely see regular Touaregs, but even more rarely you would see the diesel V10 and go, wow, that's cool. The RS6 for me is going to fall into that trap. If you only see the RS6 version, you're saying, hey, cool, a new Audi wagon. It's not that it's the special version of that car.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what if you got the special version and you debadge it? That's the real Euro move. Although it's still going to have ugly front bumper. But
You
here's
say
my
that, but
question.
then you're going to crash it, and they're going to say there's no badges on it, so we're going to give you like $8,000 for the car.
Yeah. So I have a question for you. Practical car advice. Okay, first question, not very interesting. I'm going to skip right to the second one. If you had to buy, the first question is, if you had to buy a Panamera of any generation, you're weighing everything, what would you get? Second question, same thing, Cayenne. Because I genuinely want to know, because I have some ideas like what's the best Cayenne, but I have like personal input, but you know better than anyone.
Well, actually, and this is where I'm going to shoot myself in the foot a little bit, because the only Panamera I own is the wagon,
Yeah.
and they have problems.
Do they?
Wait, the Sport Turismo?
With the hatch?
It's not
The hatch closing.
It's not because it's the wagon,
Oh.
but because the wagon only comes in a certain generation.
The new one, the current one.
Where, yeah, you have a lot of issues with various hybrid systems, depending on options, but coolant systems in that V8. I mean, again, Porsche are incredibly good at designing their own engine with the 911. They're pretty bad at repurposing engines for anything else.
Yeah.
Well, they were pretty bad at designing their own engine with the 996, so maybe it's just a 20-year delay
Yeah.
that's hitting the
Wait.
Panamera.
So
could
wait, is the modern Porsche V8?
You mean the Audi V8?
That's the question. So it's an Audi V8. Well, that's unfortunate. So
So
there we have
what
it.
they did is they designed, really strong metallurgy,
Yeah.
however you pronounce that. But the block, the rods, the pistons, crank, indestructible, right? And then they put the big turbos on, they got an intake, they got the coolant system, everything like that. Like I said, for the 901 turbo, we can double the horsepower and double the torque without changing the coolant system.
Yeah.
Fine. In that car, what they've taken is the Audi version of that engine, pumped up the horsepower another 50%, and
Yeah.
the coolant system starts cracking, the plastic seams
Yeah.
and fit and finish,
Radiator,
and that's
whole
where it
thing.
happens.
Yeah.
I mean, they designed a block solid enough for their goals, but the ancillaries were still spread
Yeah.
and not scaled
Yeah.
the same way. And that's where, like, for me, the only Panamera to own is the wagon, and you're
course.
pigeonholed into a drivetrain and a driveline where luckily it's still in warranty, but
Yeah.
out of warranty I wouldn't want to own.
Mechanically, what would you have? Like, not including wagon or whatever.
Mechanically,
like, what's the best?
for both the Cayenne and the Panamera, for me, the highlights are like 13, 14, 15, 16.
GTS.
So the,
Well,
Turbo or GTS?
or the V6?
okay, so my mother drives a 15 Cayenne diesel after I drowned our 13 Cayenne diesel.
As you do.
As you do.
Yep.
It worked out really well because we got a lot more on the Dieselgate settlement because it was 2 years newer.
It's
Enough to
a-
subsidize the cost difference
What
between
is
the
it?
one that I killed and the new one.
Is it a 3.6?
No, it's a 3-liter. It's
It's a 3-liter diesel. Okay,
and where,
V6 diesel.
Where that car is bulletproof and really reliable is they didn't change the engine. It's
Oh,
the
there you
same
go.
as the Audi
Yeah.
engine completely. I love that thing. I drive it across country every now
Yeah.
and then. It doesn't have the new gizmos and gadgets. It doesn't have the radar
which is
cruise
fine.
control.
Yeah.
But it's 36 to 40 miles to the gallon. They're cheap as chips because of the Dieselgate thing.
So, there's longevity in that. What about the 3.6 gasoline engine? No good.
No. I just don't see any benefit to it.
There's no other than that. You can get the Cayenne in stick in the 3.6, and that's the only thing I know of the Cayenne.
So
That's
I've driven a few of
desirable.
the Trans-Siberia editions.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah, there's one we work on semi-regularly, but it's unfortunately automatic. But I've seen some manual ones as well. That is a cool car,
Yeah.
and it has to be cool because everything about the first gen Cayennes is terrible.
Yeah.
But that's a LCI.
It is still terrible.
I would feel really stupid driving around in a Cayenne with graphics on it. I'm gonna be honest.
Yeah.
Even the Rothmans one.
No, that one's cool.
That one's cool.
Trans-Siberia is like.
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
Yeah, so
There's one in the Porsche Museum.
Ooh.
There was one when I was there, and also
Yeah.
this is another thing. So, sorry to interrupt you, but when I was in the Porsche Museum, we were in the cafe, and I had just met the people I was with on this last trip. Two people from Porsche. I will withhold their names, but I somehow name dropped my own car.
Of course.
And
it was Heinz and Heinz.
yes,
Yeah.
it was Hans and Franz. And I mentioned something about, I was like, oh yeah, like I talked to someone about this or, whatever. I was like, oh, my car was parked in front of the hotel at Rensport. And both these guys were like, oh, yours was that car that got hit by that truck. I was like, what?
What?
What are you talking about? They're like, oh yeah, like this car was like parallel park, like this truck was trying to turn around. It was like a small pickup. It was like a construction truck or something. It was trying to turn around and he bumped into your car. We were all shouting and waving at him and everything, and he still hit it, but it didn't do any damage. So, it was fine. He was really apologetic, but it didn't do anything. And I was like, and you both saw this, and I'm just hearing about this now, 1 year later
In Germany.
in Stuttgart. And they're like, yeah. And it was the weirdest thing.
What? So was it actually your car?
Yes, because it was parked in front of the hotel because we went and were shooting the 918 around Carmel
Dear
and around
God,
Monterey.
so-
And my car was parked in front of the hotel, and like it was parked in like one of these parallel spots in front of the hotel, and Porsche would run up the whole hotel. So all their people were coming and going in the front
Wow.
and stuff. And yeah, isn't that the weirdest thing?
That is way weird.
Yeah.
And
The
wait,
fact that this didn't get back to me till literally a year later.
where did it hit the car?
Like on the impact bumpers. Or the impact strips.
Actually, I was in an 87, 88, like a G50, but 3.2 Targa once. And we were coming back from the local LSR PCA get-together down in, not Chemo, like Friendswood area. And so we were coming back out, and
We should do one of the other ones.
we should do
If
one
you
of
ever do the
those.
other ones, like call me anytime. I'll go.
Let's do a drive. Let's do a thing.
Let's
Yeah.
do a thing.
Let's
Well, we're
do a
gonna
thing.
have you come on the next drive.
Oh, no.
Obviously, we would.
Well, I have to, because I missed out on the second drive, because the first drive was one we did together. I'm claiming it. That's our drive.
Redwood.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh yeah, the post Redwood drive was the best.
No, but we were leaving the get-together, and we're driving along. We're mid-conversation. We're stopped at a light, and dunk. Car lurches forward a half a foot or so, and we look behind us, and a kid in some kind of Infinity had rear-ended the 911 we're in.
Oh no.
And so we get out and we look at him, look at the damage. He's younger. He sees an old Porsche and he's freaking out a bit. And we go, well, our car's fine. And if we need your license plate, there's a perfect imprint of it in the impact bumper. European impact bump. The American impact bumpers are far better than the European ones
very
for
fat.
recording license
Very
plates.
fat. Yeah.
And so we looked at the front of his car and it was caved in.
Ah.
Whoa.
You know, it was like the impact bumper worked.
Yeah.
It worked well. So again, like that's where it is a bad.
There you
There was an
go.
article. So there was an article about the impact bumpers in a recent Panamera, maybe 2 issues ago. It was very interesting. I'll make this brief, but it was about how Porsche basically had like 9 months to design and implement and like put into production this design for the impact bumpers, which had to be a 5-mile-an-hour crash test. And basically, the U.S. relaxed the rules in like 89
Yeah.
to be 2.5.
Yeah.
Which is what the rest of the world was. So that's why you could have what we have today.
Yeah. That's why.
So our cars are 5 mile an hour. Everything else, like after 89, is 2.5.
Well, there you go.
But it was like kind of a crazy feat of engineering and design that they made this huge design change in such a short time frame.
That's why they.
And they was
they're
like, they're really under the gun.
We know. We'll put the Koreans.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you think about it, I mean, that's throughout human history. That's how we end up with the best things. Is shit, we've got to deal with this.
Yeah.
And we don't really have time to get the
That's-
lawyers involved. We don't really have time to get the
That's-
accountants involved.
Yeah.
The
The
marketers.
joy-
involved.
Yeah,
that's
well,
the-
being, I mean,
fix it.
as designers, we know that
Yeah.
like you always work better with like a time with
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 constraints.
rules,
With
constraints,
constraints, yeah.
exactly.
And-
I always joke. I always was joking that the 964, which I go back and forth on if I like the 964 or if I
Yeah.
love it or if I hate it. I always go back and forth as far as design, just
It looks
design.
like a wrapped.
It always looks like I came to the conclusion it looks like
Impact
it has
bumper.
the impact bumper. It just has like a cone around the impact bumper. You know, it just looks like it's the same. Like the 964 looks
the
too.
964 is a car that is bookmarked by cars that are far better than it.
But there's something cool about the purity.
bookended.
Bookended. There's
Yeah.
something cool about the purity of it being like the last one with upright headlights and everything, and being like the best mechanically and
Yeah.
all this stuff. Maybe
In theory.
Questionably.
In theory.
Okay, but
First
but,
with power steering and with problematic.
But anyway,
fine.
the whole thing is like it looks like it just has like a big bumper cover over the impact bumpers. That was my joke, and then it's like, oh wait, that's actually
It did.
that's the case.
Yeah,
it did.
it's
That's
exactly
that's
what it
true. That is
Yeah.
real.
It even has the bumperettes in the back, except that they're like molded.
Yeah.
They're like contoured in to the bumper. But I guess they work. Although I parallel parked over here in the city, and someone backed into me, and it was just high enough, their crossover, to like nick the paint portion of the bumper instead of the rubber bit. So doesn't always work out in this era, because in 1986 there were no crossovers.
In my Boxster, I managed to back into my garage door, and the center spine of the garage door actually like hit the bumper, and the bumperettes did nothing. But in my car, in the 911, the bumperettes stick out far enough, and once when I left the e-brake not on enough, it rolled into the garage door and didn't do anything. I was trying to open the garage door
Yeah.
from outside, and I'm like, why won't it open? And it's like,
So
it's stuck on the
if you
car.
remember, the 993 and the 996 both had bumperettes in the
Yeah.
beginning.
They do, yeah.
And now if you ever do a bird's eye view, which Kevin, I'm sure you have because you photographed every which angle possible,
Yes.
the center of the bumper protrudes equally but slightly further than the bumperettes.
Yeah.
I mean, it is the biggest joke of paying penance to regulations.
Yeah.
Well, on my 986, they were at least like not painted, and then after that, they were all always painted,
They're
which
painted,
kind
yeah.
of defeats the purpose a little bit.
Yeah, the black rubber bit was fine. It was
Yeah.
fine. But yeah, oh man. I mean, you know what's interesting is that Tam's 89 Carrera,
Yeah.
which is Euro, it's UK version, so right-hand drive. No bumperettes at all. No Euro bumperettes.
Well, they removed it.
Oh, did they?
just removed
Yeah,
it.
they had the smaller version. Because for the Euro plate, they kept the bumperettes, but
Yeah.
the Euro plates are so much longer they couldn't have
I thought
the
well,
same distance.
the
in
Euro
between.
bumperettes would allow for that.
The Euro bumperettes do, but they still remove them.
Oh,
on
okay.
that
Yeah, they
particular
still
case.
remove them.
Okay, never mind. So, negate that. I thought it was a thing, but it was not.
There are some cars that have. When I first got into Porsche in Australia, and I go on car sales or Auto Trader, our
Yeah.
version of Auto Trader,
Yeah.
there was a lot of 3.2 Carreras that were being like forward dated.
It's called car boomerang.
Car boomerang. It always comes back to that. So yeah, a lot of 3.2 Carreras that were basically being fitted with bumpers over the bumperettes
Yeah.
and kind of shrink wrapped. I mean,
Oh,
that
yeah.
was the aesthetic because physically the bumperette is supported by steel.
Yep. Yep.
It's there, and so removing bumperette is one thing, but you still have the protrusions.
Yeah.
And that's something that was very, very common in Australia and the UK is to start pulling the bumperettes off stuff
Yeah.
because no one wants to be an American.
No, it's a
A little bloated
Whole
at that
thing.
time.
Whole
I mean,
thing.
the Malaise era.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well, I think we have a podcast
think
here.
so, yeah.
So, Jordan, once again, thank you
Thank
for
you.
staying overnight. That is
Over
to say,
2 weeks.
over 2 weeks.
I thought we were warming up. I've got.
Oh,
No, I don't.
stories on stories, and we'll have you on again.
Yeah.
Always enjoyable.
We're already
Thanks
scheduling
again.
that in and locking you in the basement.
Yep. All right. Well,
Follow Jordan at Modern Air Cooled on Instagram. Follow me at Capturing the Machine, and also check out my story on Auto Week if you can find it. We'll link it somewhere.
it's a lovely story with the 992.
the Auto Week article because
I
then I was
want
gonna
to.
call you out on that.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
And-
You called me out. You promised to call me out, and you barely did.
It is
but
true. Choose
yeah.
to follow me should you. It's not as car related, but at Analog Dialogue, not GUE, European. Also, be careful being slow on analog because you might spell it. The first 4 letters might bring up some suggestions. Anyways, and also follow us on New for 96
Yeah.
as well. And yeah, thanks for listening.
It's a series of good places to be.
Oh my goodness. All right. Good night, all.
Bye.
Bye.
Toodles.